Welcome to the Classy Ring Attire podcast. I'm Joel.
I'm Chris.
And it's time to get classy.
Let's do it.
Oh,
yeah.
Do we have a myriad of things to talk about?
We have so many non-classy things that we need to address.
Yes.
Do we even need is Jerry Lawler even worth talking about?
So Jerry Lawler has domestic disturbance issues. He's not been removed from the company, has he?
No, he's been suspended indefinitely. Apparently, the situation is his girlfriend, who is 27.
27 to his 66.
His girlfriend is younger than me.
Mm-hmm. You are too old for Jerry Lawler.
You know what? That actually kind of feels good. I'm okay with that. I can live with that. Apparently, they were apparently quite intoxicated, and she kind of flew off the handle, and Jerry Lawler didn't exactly respond in great fashion. They were both arrested.
Yeah.
They've been released now, but he's been suspended indefinitely. And according to those who were present for the SmackDown tapings, taking his place on the commentary team is David Otunga?
Yeah. So there's a lot of things you could do with this commentary team.
Sure.
Right?
Because right now, it was Mauro Ranallo and Jerry, along with Baron, I believe.
Was Baron Corbin on there?
Not Baron. Byron Saxton. That was my fault.
Yeah.
I caused you to say Baron Corbin.
You did. This is all on you.
I'll take the heat for that.
This time.
That's my on switch to Bear. I believe Byron was on that. Lately, it had been King, Mauro, and Dolph Ziggler like the past month or so.
Okay.
I don't know if that's going to change any, or if it's going to be like Dolph, Mauro, and Otunga.
Okay, here's the big question that we really need addressed.
Mm.
Is Otunga's coffee cup going to be there?
I would imagine so.
All right, I'm okay with it then.
I mean, King had his Mountain Dew, so technically they all did, but
yeah,
he was the only one that drank it. I would imagine so. Would that make you want to watch SmackDown? Just to see if he kept up. If he kept up to living the gimmick.
Yeah, I will definitely tune in to see if the coffee cup is there.
Yeah.
So.
Also, I don't know if Dolph does commentary for the entire show. This shows you we don't watch SmackDown.
You don't have to.
No, we won't have to until it goes
That's
by.
the thing. What are they going to do on SmackDown between now and the draft episode?
Twiddle their thumbs.
So I feel like there's less of a reason to watch it than usual.
Sure, yeah.
Because any sort of storyline that might be existing exclusive to SmackDown has to have completely folded within a month.
Sure.
And just the Raw storylines are going to go forward.
Right.
So, incidentally, we found out officially that the draft would take place on the first live episode of SmackDown.
Yes.
Which seems like a good...
That's a great ratings move.
Yes.
And it shows you, because usually something of that, as far as in storyline, something of that importance would almost always happen on Raw.
Exactly.
So putting it on your first live SmackDown shows that you kind of mean business.
Right. It was also announced that Shane would be running SmackDown.
Well, Shane has announced himself that he's running SmackDown.
Yes.
There's somebody's going to have something to say about it, because according to Shane, he's running both shows.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Shane is the only one holding firm to that.
Okay. Do you think Stephanie's going to be the only one there next week and she's going to be running both shows?
Possibly because whenever he was gone the other week and he came back, he's like, "Well, I'm going to be gone again in a couple weeks," or something along those lines.
Okay.
But
correct me if I'm wrong. So the draft episode of SmackDown comes after Battleground, right?
It might come before, actually. It might be like the week, like the go home week.
Okay, but in that case, Battleground can't be a brand split exclusive.
No. I've seen, because on Reddit, like someone posted like the pay per view schedule, and next to Battleground it says like full roster.
Okay, so Battleground's the last full roster, except for the big four. The next of which happens to be
the very next one.
Yeah, the very next one was SummerSlam.
Well, yeah, I mean that's what they said. Like they're not going to go like double time on the pay per views until September. So I'm pretty sure like they just have to get through that initial period and then they'll go full tilt. And plus it'll give SmackDown a little bit more time to develop all of their, storylines and everything to necessitate
the theoretical storylines from scratch that are going to get.
Theoretically.
I mean, some storylines will have to be developed from scratch out of this draft.
Sure, just out of sheer necessity. Yeah.
But, all right, interesting.
I guess we should talk about Money in the Bank first before we go into the big news.
I disagree because the big news that you all know what it is by now. Because I probably made some terrible pun about it when making the title to this episode.
Sure.
But that colors the outcome of the show now.
Sure.
So Roman Reigns has been suspended for 30 days.
Yes.
For his first violation of the wellness policy.
Yes. Which probably had played into some amount of him losing the title. Sure. And they made sure that they announced this Tuesday afternoon. That way they went through Money in the Bank and they already set up Battleground on the next Monday Night Raw, because apparently that's going to be his last Monday Night Raw until Battleground.
Right.
Because there hasn't been any sort of announcement as if this affects it in any way, and all indication seems to be that they knew about this before Money in the Bank.
Yes. And I believe that somebody counted it up, and as of that Tuesday when he was announced, Battleground is like 34 days after that.
Sure, yeah.
So
it's just shy.
Yeah. So he can come back for that.
Sure.
So had that not happened, do you think the outcome would be any different of Money in the Bank?
I don't know. Maybe they would have put off the whole triple threat thing another month, because I feel like, again, I still feel like it's deserving for a bigger pay-per-view than
it is a little
Battleground.
Yeah,
I keep wanting to call it Battlefront. But it feels weird that they're doing it now. Not that saying that it's inorganic or anything, because the way that Money in the Bank ended, this is kind of like the logical next step.
Well, that's the thing is, I guess catharsis-wise, like that ending to Money in the Bank was just incredibly satisfying. It was everything you wanted to see, within the last little 3 minutes of the show.
And honestly, like, even just the way that Money in the Bank ended, you didn't even need the main event for Raw the next night, because you could have just come out on the beginning of Raw and be like, Battleground's going to be a triple threat with these three guys.
Yeah.
And you would have been like, yeah, that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
But, they needed a main event for the show, sure, whatever. And it's going to be Roman's last Raw for the next month. So.
Yeah, there you go. But, like, it was exciting that, like, all three members of the Shield were champion within 5 minutes of each other.
Probably quicker than that, but yeah. And that's a scenario that a lot of us just didn't think was going to happen.
Right.
But it did, and I love the ending.
Mm-hmm.
Now, whether or not any of that would have changed, maybe not. I feel like for the majority of it, Dean probably would have ended up with the championship. He would have cashed in. As far as like exactly who he cashed out on, I don't know. I don't know, and I don't know if that affected the finish either between Seth and Roman.
Right.
Would Seth have gotten a more like devious heel type of win, or or was Roman supposed to go? Because I honestly don't think they wanted Dean to cash in on Roman.
Right.
I mean, we saw that.
Well, that would be the third Money in the Bank winner in a row that cashed in on Roman, basically.
Sure. I mean, Roman wasn't technically champ, but he did eat the pin in 31.
Yeah. And then Sheamus
absolutely, in. Yeah. So technically, yeah, you're right. I don't know. It all, honestly, it all depends on exactly what they originally had planned for Battleground.
And SummerSlam by
default. This could have easily had been the planned finish for Battleground. Mm-hmm. It could have easily been that. But I'm okay with it. Like, I'm okay with like not really having a briefcase lingering for so long.
Yeah.
I
mean, the briefcase is a very mixed blessing because it does have kind of this excitement sometimes of like, could happen at any time. Here it comes.
Sure.
And then when it does happen, 6-8 months afterwards, like then that finally pulled that trigger. That's so very exciting.
But also we had gotten burned. It felt like we got burned a few times of like the fake cash-ins or the almost cash-ins.
Exactly.
And we really overplayed that last few years,
And there's some things where like Sheamus won last year. It's like, oh, I don't want Sheamus to win anything.
Sure.
And so
it's weird. Like, even though it was one of those situations where there was only one Money in the Bank winner that year, it still felt like we didn't know what to do with this particular briefcase, so we gave it to Sheamus because he's got a mohawk now.
And then like the briefcase doesn't become this unfulfilled promise of excitement. It's instead this like sword of Damocles that's like, oh, this threat.
Sure, but at the same time, they like to typically give the briefcase to somebody who doesn't necessarily need a storyline, I guess for a few months. And that could have been Dean because, he was kind of lingering in that space.
Yeah.
It's about like a year ago, where he just didn't really have anything going. He just came out and had a match, and people went nuts for him.
Yeah, that was the one thing where it's like when he climbed the ladder, when he won, you're like, oh, I hope this doesn't mean like, because I could see them being like, Dean is going to cash in at Survivor Series. It's going to be great, and have nothing between now and Survivor Series.
And that's like the thinking where I was like, well, maybe Cesaro would win because they like having him just kind of, sit around and not give him anything. But having a briefcase would look good with that suit,
Yeah. So when Roman comes back, do you think he's going to get the title back?
God, I hope not. Like, I'm hoping that, honestly, because, yeah, sure, you got your suspension and everything, but as far as, like, being there, you kind of need to take your lumps.
Yeah.
I kind of see this as his Triple H moment. You know what I mean? Like, with the
curtain call.
The curtain call, know? Wherein, like, there is no one else to blame, so he's got to just kind of take his medicine. Which is, some would say, again, that's what the suspension is for. But, I don't know.
I mean, you also... But he's coming back with a main event pay-per-view match.
Sure.
Ready and laid out for him.
I think whoever wins is probably going to end up pinning Roman.
And you think so?
He's going to have to sit in the mid-card for a little bit, but we all know Vince, and that's not going to last very long.
All right.
I'd say he's back in the main event picture by Survivor Series.
Oh, yeah.
If not sooner.
Yeah. I think it's very possible that he'll win it back.
Yeah, and just pick up right where he left off kind of thing. Yeah, I can absolutely see that happening.
I am hoping, and so if any of you go to a show live between now and then, I am hoping the overwhelming noise of Dean being champion will be enough to take pause. Now that they pulled the trigger, now that the title's on him.
Sure.
And you can see, like, this is working right now. What is happening is working.
Because so far, he's batting 1,000 as far as, like, crowd reaction. Yeah. And granted, it's the night after and everything, but still, like, that's a pretty huge reaction. Hopefully that continues. And honestly, tell me where you've heard this before, but this would be a great time to turn Roman heel.
Yes, it would.
It would be, because I feel like if ever there was an opportunity, it's here, because honestly, we've almost seen, like, to death, like, the whole, like, Seth versus Dean, Seth versus Roman thing. Like, they've all had those, like, fully, like, flushed out.
It's time for another one to be the heel.
Right. So we haven't seen Roman versus Dean, and let that be the main event. You can let that be the main event. If they're so, if they're so set on Roman being in the main event, turn him heel, go up against Dean, and that would be a pretty good program. Or a program, at least, that we hadn't seen.
Didn't Roman and Dean fight for the title at last Survivor
Series? Sure, but they were still bros. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It didn't have the emotion. It was more of like just for the competition of it, to move on kind of thing, but not necessarily like because they despise each other or they have a grudge or whatever.
Right.
There hasn't been that aspect.
Right.
So in that sense, it feels fresh.
Okay. All right.
And you could pull the whole thing where Dean's just like, you know what, I'm tired of, you always taking the spotlight kind of thing.
And I think the thing is right now, the most over guy in the company is your champion.
Yeah.
And that's not happened since WrestleMania 30.
No.
Like,
I mean, you can kind of argue Brock.
Yeah. But but Brock's not there all the time.
But Brock is the kind of like
Brock is a special circumstance anomaly kind of thing. It's very hard to.
But like the week to week, always there, getting big reactions and everything.
Right.
Yeah, I agree. Granted, Seth is incredibly over. Had they kept him face, but
he is. But I would still say Dean was the most over guy in the company throughout the bulk of Seth's run,
as per what WWE was wanting, yes. Like, here's a guy that WWE purposely is having a face, and they want him as a face, and the fans are responding in kind.
Yeah.
Which is very rare for WWE these days.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. I'm okay with it.
Okay. All right. How did you feel the actual match went between Seth and Roman?
I enjoyed it. If you would have asked me, and I know a lot of people feel the same way, the spear leading into the pedigree,
right,
should have ended the match. Like, that should have been, like, he could have done another pedigree before that and that he kicked out of, but that should have been the one. Like, that was such a good spot.
Yeah, I agree.
The part where Seth was trying to do the I can't even think of what it's called. I'm probably going to get crucified for this. But the spot that he originally got injured on, and they kind of did that spot again.
Right.
And it just kind of went awkwardly, mostly because Roman was holding his leg kind of like, we know, like, in the truth behind it is Roman was protecting him.
Right.
But
stressing us
out, and at the same time, like, you didn't have to go for if Roman was going to, like, protect you like that and hold your leg to where you wouldn't, rotate like that or awkwardly, you don't need to do it if that's a concern,
Yeah, I get that.
Like, don't do it until he doesn't need to do it until he's comfortable doing it.
Yeah, I wanna bring up the Daniel Bryan's debut of the flying knee at SummerSlam.
Okay.
When he hit John Cena with it for the first time.
Yeah. Caught us all by surprise.
The thing is, there was no, like, announcement of a new finisher.
No.
There was nothing about, there was no indication that there would be a new finisher for Daniel Bryan.
No.
There was just out of nowhere, he hit this flying knee on John Cena. And it came off perfectly. And it was the best version of that move I think I've ever seen before or since then.
Sure, no, absolutely.
But it came out so impressively in that moment that sitting there watching that live is like, that has to end the match. He can't get up from that.
Right.
I know it's not a finisher. I don't care. That move looking like that has to finish the match. Mm-hmm. And that's how the Pedigree Spear is. And is one of my bigger gripes with the whole concept of finishers. Where it's like, oh, we know what this is. It's got a name.
Sure.
Even good-looking finishers, even the GTS and even the F5, like, they look solid. They look brutal. They look like, how does he get up from that? But
we know it's coming.
Right. The match can't end until the finisher is hit.
Right.
So we just kind of gotta wait until the finisher.
Sure.
Which I wish was not the case. I would much prefer a situation where, like, the coolest looking, the most brutal looking move is what ends the match.
I mean, especially if you're gonna have so many false finishes, then what's the point of it?
Exactly.
I can agree with that. Especially like I do think though, like if you have a finisher that's been kicked out of and you use like a special version of that,
right?
Again, that should end the match. Like, this is this is a different scenario, but the RKO at 31,
right?
It ended the match as it should have.
Right.
You're never going to see an RKO like that ever again.
Yeah.
Mostly because they banned the curb stomp. So, like, that's about as like the pedigree. Honestly, is not an impressive move.
Right.
It gets the job done, sure, but it's just you're having another guy between your legs and plumbing him in the ground. So when you find a way to actually make that move look impressive, end the match with that.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I'm with you. How'd you feel the rest of the show went?
I'm pretty positive on the show in general. Yeah. Went surprisingly long, and I actually didn't mind all that much.
No.
Because it felt like everything was kind of given its proper time.
Yeah.
No, nothing felt particularly rushed.
Titus and Rusev felt long.
Sure, that felt long.
But at the same time, it felt long because I was expecting it to be so short. Like, I was expecting a 2.5 minute squash match, pretty much. Mm-hmm. And so the fact that it wasn't that, it was good it wasn't that good, that, there was a little bit of back and forth. That's actually really good. It felt like, looking at where it was on the card, what match it was like, oh, that's going to be a little, 2-minute, 50-second squash match, and it wasn't. So at the 3-minute mark, I was like, this is really going on. This is a long match. Yeah. But it really wasn't that long.
Honestly, I could have done without the female tag team match.
Yeah.
It did nothing for me. Everyone's pointing out the spot where Natalya was like crawling back for the tag, and someone's supposed to come like cut her off, and that person isn't there, and so she's just kind of like, she looks like a fish out of water.
Yeah.
So that stuff like that's easy to point at, but honestly, I'm not saying it was like full on back in the Divas era, but it kind of felt like that. Your typical like, the ladies having their tag team match, like, and again, like part of that, I guess they didn't want to go to the Charlotte Natalya well again.
Yeah.
For the 4th pay-per-view in a row? 3rd?
Probably.
And again, as we know now, they had Sasha Banks, kind of waiting in the wings. Again, for Battleground. Mm-hmm. What's up with that?
Maybe they think Battleground's a big deal?
Maybe they're trying to convince us that Battleground's a big deal.
All right.
Like they kind of stacked Money in the Bank in some aspects. Maybe they're trying to do the same with this.
I mean, some of the appeal.
I mean, this is also this is the last
full roster.
I mean, granted, SummerSlam. But by SummerSlam,
this is the last full roster, non-Big Four pay-per-view, which is
right. Because the SmackDown before is going to pretty much be taken up by the draft.
Right.
So they don't really,
They're not going to do that much. I mean, they'll do a lot of advertising for Battleground because that's how they operate. Sure.
But they won't have that episode to build anything new for Battleground at SmackDown. Exclusive.
Well, they also have, they're going to have 2 guys on the card. Mm-hmm. Let's say Sami Zayn, Kevin Owens, just for example. Mm-hmm. And they're going to split. They're going to have a match at Battleground, but they're going to split them. So there is this feeling of, this is it. This is the last time we're fighting each other because we're going to different shows. So this is our all for one for all final moment.
And I'm pretty sure, like, whatever they do with the mid-card belts, one will be on one show, one will be on the other. Like, they'll already determine that beforehand, so there'll be that aspect.
Yeah.
But beyond that, like, who knows? But again, like, they wouldn't have time to build anything new from that one split SmackDown.
Yeah.
And so SummerSlam, technically the rosters will be together, but at that point they'll, kind of all be working their own thing.
Yes.
Now, because this is like the second pay-per-view in like the past 6 months or so that has gone like way beyond the 11 o'clock hour.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that the pay-per-views that have a joint locker room will go longer than normal?
I think they said that SummerSlam and Survivor Series are starting at 7 now.
They did? Uh-huh. I must have missed that.
So I'm assuming that's...
Plus kickoff.
Yeah.
Because technically, like, they all start at 7 with kickoff.
Right. So the actual show is going to start... They're going to be 4-hour shows now instead of 3-hour shows.
Sure, and hopefully keeping the Raw and SmackDown exclusive pay-per-views to 3 hours.
Oh, hopefully so. Hopefully so.
But at the same time, this should, in theory, get more guys pay-per-view time.
Yes.
Which, can only be a good thing for them, I guess.
I mean, about 5-6 years ago, I was sitting here ready to be like, no. Definitely, like, here's why ending the brand split will be the perfect solution to all your mid-card woes. Here it is. Let me lay it out for you in black and white, blah, 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 blah.
Sure.
And as wrong. So, who knows what this is going to do.
Absolutely. I'm actually trying to look up the pay-per-view schedule now. Thanks to Reddit.
While you're doing that, I do want to mention John Cena's match. John Cena and AJ Styles had a match.
Pretty good match.
Really good match.
Yeah.
Like, really, really good match. About halfway through that match, I realized, I knew the club was going to run and interfere. That was, like, telegraphed from a mile away. Obviously, the club's going to come in. They're going to interfere in some way. But watching this match, watching these two guys go at each other, knowing what that means, the parallel but different paths they have taken, this, finally meeting, and then to have it be this well executed of a match. Right. Just the interactions that they were having with each other, the in-ring psychology, all that on top of solid match work. I was really, really digging this match, and I started to, like, get really stressed, and I was like, and the club's going to come in, and it's going to ruin it. That's just going to be, like, the little asterisk at the end of the thing.
Yeah.
And then it happened, and I was like, of course it happened. But then AJ talked about it.
Right. He actually came out and he did the whole apology thing, and just kind of basically ensured that the feud is going to continue, and that kind of makes the outcome of their Money in the Bank match a little bit more digestible, Because, if this was going to be their one-off, I'm like, yeah, this kind of sucks at the clubs. But the fact that it's obviously going to continue at least until to Battleground.
I still think it's the Cena trilogy, lose, win, win. So,
sure. So Cena lost here and then he'll win the next two. Mm-hmm. Fair enough.
And we might start throwing some stipulations, some cage matches.
Oh, sure.
Or maybe even an I Quit. We could end this on, Cena's traditional I Quit.
Because I don't think he's done that in a while.
Not in a while. But he's never lost.
No, he hasn't. So I've got the schedule.
Okay.
Interestingly enough, Joel.
Yes.
2016 will mark the end of your yearly Night of Champions complaints.
Because there is no Night of Champions?
No, there is no.
Wow.
After SummerSlam.
Free.
After SummerSlam, as it's billed as a network exclusive, we'll have Backlash. SmackDown. They're bringing back Backlash.
To give it to SmackDown?
To give it to SmackDown.
That was a Raw pay-per-view, wasn't it?
Back in the day? I don't know. Usually, back in the day, it was just the pay-per-view that immediately happened after WrestleMania, hence the name.
Yes.
Then after that is the Raw pay-per-view, Clash of Champions, bringing back the WCW name.
Okay.
I'm guessing since it's just Raw, it's not going to have the same stipulations as Night of Champions.
Mm-hmm.
Who knows? Then bringing back No Mercy for SmackDown. They're bringing back a lot of names that they already have trademarks for.
I was like, these are also just like the generic names that they have.
Then Raw gets Hell in a Cell.
Okay.
Survivor Series is going to be both.
Uh-huh.
SmackDown gets TLC.
Okay.
Then Raw. Apparently, as we find out with most road constructions, it kind of like gradually moves down the line. So now it's moved up because Roadblock is now in December.
So Roadblock is happening twice in 2016. Because it happened before WrestleMania this year.
It's not listed as a pay-per-view on the pay-per-view schedule. But technically, yes, Roadblock has happened twice. Because it was just a house show. It was a network house show.
But when we do the classes at the end of the year, and you're like, what is your favorite event? And you have to say, and you want to say Roadblock, you're going to have to specify which Roadblock you're talking about. Not that I think
Roadblock... I was about to say, well, first of all... we can already go ahead and X out of the first Roadblock, and the second Roadblock is going to have to knock it out of the freaking park because it's taking place December 18th.
Yeah.
They're not going to... Do you really think they're going to put a whole lot of effort into a pay-per-view that's 7 days away from Christmas?
Oh, no, of course not.
Yeah.
But it's just there's 2 Roadblocks in 2016.
Am I coming over for all of these pay-per-views? We might have to do like a alternating schedule. Raw SmackDown or Raw pay-per-views at Joel's place, SmackDown pay-per-views at Chris's place or something along those lines, and then just kind of coin flip for the joint. Oh man,
it's a lot of wrestling.
It's a lot of wrestling. Again, like it's like you pointed out last week, you're gonna have these pay-per-views like every other week.
Mm-hmm.
On top of Raw, on top of live SmackDown on Tuesdays, on top of NXT on Wednesdays, and on top of the Cruiserweight series that is recording like now.
To say nothing of...
So summer's going... Oh my goodness, summer's going to have so much wrestling.
Yeah. And this is to say nothing of... Well, nothing of... If you watch any other... If you watch New Japan or Ring of Honor or Lucha or anything else...
If you watch anything outside of WWE,
there's some more.
Your life is watching wrestling.
Again, to say nothing of everything else on the network. You know, they're really pushing, Swerve. It's like, I don't got time for Swerve. Sure. I got real wrestling to watch.
Sure.
I don't got time for Holy Foley. I got,
Sure.
You're cramming it down my throat.
Honestly, I wouldn't mind that so much if they're doing that, now, during the summer.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's not as much to watch over the summer. Sure, you have, summer-specific shows that come out, but... It's not nearly as much or whatever.
It's not as packed as...
Sure. But come the fall, when there's, other stuff on, when there's football, gross. I mean, I know the Bears aren't going to have a great season because we still have Jay Cutler, but there's going to be some Sunday nights where I'm I really would like to watch a Bears game.
But there's a 50-50 shot there's going to be a pay-per-view on
right, now. Yeah. Typically I could, Bears got the Sunday night game, but this pay-per-view's on the same time. It'll be okay. I can miss this Bears game. It's fine. But now it's just I'm never going to see them again.
Nope.
I mean, granted, I don't think they have that many Sunday night games, but still.
It's interesting to see how it will work out. Freddie Prinze Jr. Is not a segue, right?
I'm waiting for the segue, but go on.
Freddie Prinze Jr. told a story about his time working as the writer. And he talked about how he a big chunk of this, the famous part of this story is how he talked about how Vince doesn't know.
Oh, this is the Vince is a robot story kind of thing?
Yeah, it's part of that. That was the first part is, Vince doesn't know pop culture. Because he called Vince Robo-Vince, and Vince didn't get it. He's like RoboCop. Vince didn't know what RoboCop was.
Right. It's like, why are you watching that when you have WWE? That kind
of thing. And so he talked about, I think he said he was on the plane, and he was trying to watch, like, Richard Pryor or something.
Right.
And Vince asked him, why aren't you watching WrestleMania?
Right.
And he's like, I
wanted something funny, and he's like, we've got Santino.
Yeah. But, like, I feel like Vince is really trying to make that's his genuine goal, is, like, anytime you're watching anything, it should be a WWE product.
Right.
We talk about,
and this is before the network.
Yes. Well, and so the WWE universe is, I guess it's us. We are the WWE universe, but, like, it's, in a way, it's like the Marvel universe at this point, where, like, there are these independent things, but they still interact with each other and they affect each other. I don't have to watch Thor 2 to necessarily be able to keep up with, Captain America.
Sure.
That's the part I really care about. But there's still going to be this and that I miss, and so, like, if all my guys end up on Raw and SmackDown's nothing, it's like, well, I'm just not going to watch the SmackDown stuff. Like, I'll catch it later, or I'll figure it out. But it's still, like the expanded universe is there now.
Sure.
So we got 3 different shows and pay-per-views. I mean, just imagine.
So if Vince was running Marvel, he would just be like, someone would be like, guys, I really want to watch Batman. He's like, but Thor Ragnarok. Come on. Like, why are you watching Batman when there's Thor Ragnarok, you guys?
Okay, so we are going to have a week before the end of this year where we will watch, we will be watching all that stuff, so Sunday through Thursday. But there will also be an NXT special the Saturday before. So, every day.
Well, yeah, you're talking about SummerSlam.
Mm-hmm.
Christ.
So,
alive.
The Saturday leading into SummerSlam.
Saturday.
Then SummerSlam.
Then the next episode of NXT.
Then with Raw, SmackDown, then NXT and Cruiserweight.
Oh, man.
So, that's a lot of wrestling.
Hopefully, at least half of it is good.
Yeah.
You can count on NXT, maybe half of SummerSlam. There might be a segment or two on Raw that we might find, pleasant. We don't know about SmackDown yet.
Yeah, the thing is, it's still really...
NXT is going to be, probably whatever they recorded for people that didn't get on TakeOver.
Mm-hmm.
And Cruiserweight should be good, considering who's all involved.
So, how much, assuming, and this is a big assumption, but assuming that all of the wrestling is good, really genuinely good, 3.5 stars is the worst match. Everything else is, 4 stars is pretty standard, a fair amount of, 4.5 stars, and then maybe 3 matches that are genuine 5-star matches. So all out, just firing on all cylinders. They've got it working out, ready to go. So at its best, how much wrestling is still too much wrestling? Because that is 2, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. That's 15 hours of wrestling.
Sure. So you're asking how much is too much wrestling? 15 hours of wrestling. I'm trying to not find a gross analogy that involves having sex all the time, but eventually it's just you have to go to an extreme to feel anything again. You know what I mean? It's just, if it's all great wrestling, which if they bat 1,000, it's impossible almost. But if they pull it off, even then you're just by Thursday, you're just I guess that's all great, but I just, my meter's kind of all out of whack right now.
Yeah.
Because I've been watching nonstop wrestling for 6 days.
Mm-hmm.
Man, oh Lord. Like, Friday, I'm going to just have to cut every electronic appliance I have off and just...
I mean, we
go monk mode.
We talked about, like, with WrestleMania this year, they had... It was 4 solid days of wrestling. It was NXT, Hall of Fame, WrestleMania, then the Raw after.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I was pretty much done at that point.
Oh, sure. Like, we were all pretty much, kind of going through the motions when it came to Raw after. I
will say that we covered 4 days of wrestling in a single podcast.
Yeah.
It was a monster podcast. We had to split it into 2 parts, but it's our longest podcast. Blair was on it, so Blair is our official longest podcast guest.
Sure.
As of right now.
And Chastity, anytime you want to come back on the podcast.
He beat out Chastity. I'm just saying, if Chastity wants to reclaim her title, the week after SummerSlam's looking pretty good.
Oh, God.
Because we'll have 6 days of wrestling to cover instead of the usual 3.
Yeah, we're going to have to record that week on a Friday.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah,
man.
no.
And like the podcast is going to be like 5 minutes long because it's just going to be like me like in front of the microphone just going, I want to die.
They wrestled, you guys.
They wrestled.
They did the thing, and then there were the pins.
It's like, how was this one match? Good, I guess. Like, I don't know anymore. I don't feel anything anymore. Like that, it's going to feel like that.
Okay.
I'm getting tired just thinking about this just because you brought this up. And we're like, what, 2 months away?
Yeah.
I feel like I need to, like, start getting electrolytes in me now.
So, we do okay right now because we pretty much don't cover SmackDown.
Yes.
SmackDown doesn't exist unless not someone on the internet, but a large percentage of the internet tells me, hey, you need to go watch this thing that happened on SmackDown.
Sure.
And that happens, I would say, maybe 3 times a year.
Where something genuinely, like
this match
happens on SmackDown, where you feel compelled to go back and watch.
And honestly, you treat it just as any other, like, I mean, the indie matches have little mini viral moments fairly regularly, They'll probably at least once a month, some match will get passed around from something. It's like, hey, check out this.
Right.
So when I treat SmackDown like that, that's fine. So we get by right now because we pretty much ignore SmackDown.
Right. And even on weeks where like this, where you have the pay-per-view and the Raw after, we're still just like, like we're all, we're a little tired after that, because it's still a lot of hours to sit there.
It's interesting because I was thinking about it today, and the Roman suspension was announced,
right?
And that honestly, that affected everything.
Mm-hmm.
That's why
we overshadowed it a lot.
Well, that's why we ended up talking about that first and foremost, because that colors my opinions and my thoughts on everything how Raw went down, how Money in the Bank went down.
Mm-hmm.
And so, at what point can Vince genuinely not be in charge of everything? And this is Vince.
Yeah.
Who is a machine beyond regular man.
And again, according to reports, Vince was not backstage for Raw or SmackDown this week.
Yeah.
I don't know exactly what all that is. Like, Stephanie wasn't there either.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
She's at, at Cannes or something. I don't know. But if all that's true, that's pretty interesting.
Mm-hmm. Well, Raw and SmackDown have to compete with each other, right? There's
no, yeah, absolutely. Like they have to have separate writing staffs, separate everything really, but but especially separate writing staff that
Well, Paul Heyman has said on multiple occasions, he's talked about, like, Raw's always been the number one wrestling show since, this point in time. And he always is like, there's a little asterisk there because SmackDown was beating it for a while.
Mm-hmm.
When Paul Heyman was writing, SmackDown was beating it.
Right.
But it was still the WWE, so, like...
And honestly, the reason why, because Paul Heyman was all about that. Like, he was all about beating out Raw.
Mm-hmm.
And, unless you've got a head writer or a writing staff that takes on a similar amount of enthusiasm, we're probably not going to see that.
But if you're in charge of SmackDown, how is that not your single-minded, focus-driven goal? Yeah.
You should be. I mean, that's who should be put in charge. But if it's the same person calling all the shots, Vince, on both shows, then, SmackDown's kind of, I don't want to say doomed to fail, but it's doomed to kind of stay put.
Yeah. I mean, SmackDown's always been the second favorite child.
Sure.
And that I get it, and that's fine, but the best thing about NXT is it looks and feels different.
Yeah.
It feels like an NXT product. The matches feel like NXT matches. And it's that thing where it's like, look, it's indie wrestling. Not really, it's our wrestling. It's,
Sure.
But it's indie wrestling. It's,
right.
It has that...
Like how Cruiserweight series is going to feel, because there's going to be a ton of guys who are not on contract.
Right.
That are competing in a WWE ring, so it feels independent, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Still technically on WWE TV, but it's going to feel more independent than even NXT.
But the thing is, so NXT has this distinctive NXT feel. And SmackDown should strive for this.
Mm-hmm.
This is a match you can only do on SmackDown. This is a storyline you can only do on SmackDown. It shouldn't just be Blue Raw.
Sure.
Which is what it's been for years.
I would like to see them also get a different set, Just to, again, just get a different look. Doesn't have to be, complicated. Doesn't even have to have the fist or anything like that. But just have, an overall, completely, from head to toe, different feel.
So, I read about this today, actually. But
I just more look forward to WrestleMania now.
Yeah.
For that.
I do think some stuff needs to be different. The lighting needs to be different. The rope should be a different color.
Sure.
I mean, it's still, if you showed me a match, and, any random match, I could tell you if it was a SmackDown match or a Raw match because of the lighting.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a good thing. But if it wasn't for the lighting, I couldn't, and that's where the issue comes in. You get something like the Straight Edge Society, I don't think that would have worked on Raw the way it would have worked on SmackDown.
Sure.
SmackDown had a different feel, and that's the most recent thing I can think of, and that's not a great example.
Right.
It's just the example.
It's just a type of storyline.
Well, it's the example, the tail end before SmackDown just became Blue Raw.
Sure.
Without any question. I mean, you go back a little further, when SmackDown had their 6 big guys.
Sure.
You had this as the feel of a SmackDown show.
And they were, the identity of the show.
Right.
Sure. And again, sets aren't necessarily important, because, again, you can have a whole different set and still feel like Blue Raw, but with a fresh coat of paint, Again, it all comes down to, like I said, it comes to a head writer or a writing staff that is all about doing something different and doing something unique, and doing something, good.
Yeah.
And it just depends on... It all depends on the amount of enthusiasm of the writing staff and whoever's actually calling the shots.
Right.
I know, we've had our fingers crossed, maybe, they'll give this to Triple H like they did with him in NXT.
Mm-hmm.
Even though I'm pretty sure just the stuff he does with NXT takes up a lot of time, so I don't know if he'll do that and SmackDown.
Yeah.
That's kind of a lot on top of, his corporate duties outside of all this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Who knows?
I still say too much wrestling is better than not enough wrestling.
Okay.
The fact that I have this overwhelming plethora of wrestling to choose from, and that's not just a WWE thing. That's, if I want to watch lucha wrestling, it's a different type of wrestling. It's a stylized, different shot, different. Like the whole show is portraying itself differently.
So say that again. Your initial premise.
More wrestling is still better than not enough wrestling.
All right, Neil, I want you to isolate that audio, and I want you to send that to me and make that I'll make that my ringtone. So the moment we get like halfway through the SummerSlam week of hell, and Joel's like, "Oh my God," I'm going to hold my phone up on full volume next to Joel's ear and play that for him. Just out of your own mouth.
So the reason that's true,
okay,
is because we haven't yet defined what not enough wrestling is.
Okay, I think we're going to find out.
So if it's zero wrestling, then there you go, not enough wrestling.
Sure,
that's not enough wrestling in my life. I still need some wrestling.
Sure.
In my life. That I want that and crave that.
We found that out when you were kind of taking your somewhat hiatus.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's been a year. Jeez.
Yeah.
But and part of that was just I couldn't stay away from knowing stuff,
Sure.
And part of that's because
imagine if the Roman Reigns suspension happened while you were on hiatus, you just be like, all right, no, hiatus is over, I'm back.
Well, and I was talking to my brother today, and I mentioned that Dean Ambrose had been champion, and he went, who? And I was like, no, Dean Ambrose, because he watched wrestling while, he had a little bit as a kid,
Sure.
I did. But mostly when I got back into it in college, he would watch over the summer because I was occupying the TV at home. So he had to if he was going to watch something. So, but it's like, that was before the Shield debuted.
Yeah, so to him it's not that big of a deal.
Right. So he kind of had an idea of what was going on at the time. You watch the same show for week in and week out for 2 months. You know who the characters are.
Right.
And he would notice, that's John Cena and that's R-Truth doing something and whatever.
Right.
But he's back to huge chunks of the roster is just that guy. I don't recognize that guy at all.
Sure. So is this enough curiosity to where Davis will be joining us for pay-per-views?
No.
Okay, fair enough. I'm trying to grow our circle.
I understand.
Just there's some like a high you get off of just converting one more person to watch wrestling. Like my sister, I can now get her to watch wrestling if it's Asuka or even maybe Nakamura because she's seen both their matches and then Asuka is more so she's like, I like that guy, and then I showed her No Way Jose. She's like, I really like him. I was like, right?
Okay, but see, here's the interesting thing because you bring that up. So, Nakamura.
Yep.
Once you see Nakamura, you want more Nakamura.
Yes.
Same thing happened with the cruiserweight. They had this list of people, and there were some people. There's some people I knew. There's some people I recognized the name of, but didn't really see anything of them.
And there were some people that you hadn't even heard of, yeah.
But this just opened up this world of YouTube, just watch this match.
Yeah.
So, and I did not watch 15 hours of wrestling, but it was it was in a week where I had already watched a chunk of Raw. I knew I would be dedicating a whole Sunday, within the next couple of days, I knew that there was a pay-per-view, and yet I still was seeking out more wrestling because it wasn't enough for me yet.
Right.
And obviously part of this comes down to that was stuff I was interested in.
Right.
I would say on a great episode of Raw, 40% of the storylines I'm really, really interested in.
Right.
There's stuff that doesn't make me groan,
Mm-hmm.
But, like, if they didn't cover that this week, yeah, whatever.
So, just kind of, like, backtrack a little bit. So, you've kind of been, like, going back and, like, watching a little bit of some of the guys that are on the Cruiserweight.
Right.
Have you looked anything up on Kota Ibushi yet?
I don't think so.
Because you know what would be great?
What?
Watching Wrestle Kingdom 9, finally! Because he's fighting Nakamura in that. Like, it's a great match.
Okay.
Like, now that you, like, are familiar with Nakamura now, like, doesn't that make you kind of want to watch it?
It's on my to-do list.
It's been on your to-do list for, like, 2 years.
Of course it has.
And you watched, like, one match that you liked a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And that's it.
Yeah.
I'll almost like take it a step further and be like, Joel, you can just skip forward and just watch Kota Ibushi versus Nakamura, and then watch the main event. It's Tanahashi and Okada. He's mulling it over, you guys, or either that, or he's trying to come up with another excuse.
It's not so much an excuse as it is an explanation, because I should have watched Wrestle Kingdom 9 by now.
Yes.
Obviously, I should have watched Wrestle Kingdom 10 by now.
Yes. Wrestle Kingdom 9 was better though. So if you had to make a decision, I'd say go 9. Although 10 has AJ versus Nakamura, that was a great match.
Yeah. I don't know. It's weird because, like, you're trying to define aspects of your fandom when you break it down like this.
Sure. Yeah.
And some of it is when you have to decide what you're watching for.
Right.
And we've talked about this.
Mm-hmm.
And
kind of like what you're wanting to get out of it.
And we've said, for me, it's the story.
Sure.
It's always comes back to the story.
Mm-hmm. Whereas, New Japan is more of the match.
Mm-hmm.
A little bit of story, but not nearly as much as what we're used to.
Right. And so there are matches. There are specific matches where you're like, that match tells a story.
Mm-hmm.
Every match should tell a story.
Right.
But there are some matches like that is a beautiful constructed match that these two people going back and forth, this dance, this choreography, this thing that they're doing, this back and forth, this rise of all. Like, you have these, you have a hero-villain story, you have, this underdog, so you can have all this story, these story elements in a single match. Here's the match, no background needed.
Sure.
That's harder to do, that's trickier to do.
Right.
So, like right now, I'm really jonesing on Lucha Underground.
Sure, because it's a linear story.
It's a story-heavy television show. Sure. And it is wrestling that I can binge watch.
Sure.
Which didn't exist before Lucha Underground. Like, after any episode of Raw, I was spent.
Sure.
Like I cannot watch 2 episodes of Raw back-to-back.
Right.
And part of it is Lucha's 1 hour. But a big part of it is... You want
to find out what happens on the next week or whatever.
I'm watching, for the most part, I'm watching Johnny Mundo wrestle every hour.
Sure.
So,
So that really, that's so
the guys for you. The guys that I like, or anybody else, but the guys that I like, this storyline's moving at a fairly brisk clip.
Sure.
I love Dean Ambrose, but he's only going to have 1 segment, maybe 2 segments,
Per week.
Yeah, per week. Whereas in what would be this same time span, it's 3 episodes of Lucha Underground, which is 3 main events.
Sure.
So just viewing it like that, and part of it is I'm now conditioned, like if I'm sitting down for wrestling, it's gonna be a while. I can't sit down for 1 hour wrestling. NXT feels weird because it's an hour.
Right.
And that's nothing bad. And that's not an endorsement for anything longer than an hour. NXT should be an hour.
Sure.
Because NXT feels full. NXT feels crammed in a good way.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember what it was.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what the whole setup was, but there was an episode where somebody came to William Regal and was like, William Regal, I need a match against this guy that I don't like, that basic thing.
Sure.
And William Regal says, yes, that's a great match. Unfortunately, tonight's show is all booked up. You'll have to wait till next week.
Sure.
And first of all, that was really awesome because what? A general manager that isn't booking on the fly.
Sure.
What a responsible person who takes his job seriously.
And so the general manager's like, you know what? I hadn't thought up of a good main event until just now. So you're on. Like that kind of thing. Like you're a half hour into the show. Mm-hmm. You're just now putting your main event together. Like, what the crap?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but on top of that, the fact that he was talking about this episode of NXT is full.
Yeah. Like even with your metaphor with Raw is the Muppet Show. Kermit's got his final act already planned out.
Yeah.
He's going crazy and he's stressed out leading up to that, but he's got it all planned.
Yeah.
Typically.
So I've seen 4 matches of Wrestle Kingdom 9.
4, okay.
Yeah, it's been more than just the one.
Okay. But the one's the only one that you talked about because that was the one that stood out to that
4 tag team,
the Fatal 4-Way tag team. Yeah.
Because New Japan is more compelling to me, at least, one match at a time.
Sure.
Having those, seeing each match as its own individual thing. There's not a really overarching this is the story of New Japan.
Sure.
And part of it is, especially for something like Wrestle Kingdom, there's guys coming in from other places to wrestle this event.
Right.
Especially from Ring of Honor.
Right.
So that's why that has happened.
Sure.
And that's the thing about going back to the cruiserweight. I'm not watching any, overarching storylines. I'm watching this guy. I'm watching this match.
Right. The storyline of this is all these guys are trying to, be the ultimate winner at the end of this thing.
Right.
It's the tournament aspect. Anytime they have that on Raw, any sort of tournament.
Yeah.
It's its own storyline, and from that you could breed other storylines. But you don't necessarily need that because, again, most of these guys aren't under contract.
Yeah.
So you don't need storyline beyond this.
I feel like I should wrap all of this up into, a very compelling but coherent thesis statement.
Go on.
But I don't have one.
Then why even bring it up?
I feel like we've gotten to that point where I'm like, all right, we've made it. We're at the hour. I'm out of stuff to say.
Always remember, that kind of thing.
Yeah, and I was like, and that's why I feel this way about this.
And that, friends, is why Joel is fully endorsing Donald Trump as your next president.
Don't even.
Donald Trump for Lord and Savior.
Don't even. Don't.
You left the blank empty.
That was not what the blank was going to be.
I decided to fill in the blank my own way. How dare you stifle my creativity?
Alright, do you have anything else we need to do this week?
Not necessarily. No, we're good.
Alright. As always, you can follow us on Twitter at CR Attire. We live tweet all Mondays and appropriate Sundays and maybe appropriate all Tuesdays coming up.
Appropriate every day. If you have any questions, comments, anything you want us to bring up on the show, if you want to talk to Joel about his newfound conversion to Trumpism,
I will
send that all to our email. That's classyringattire@gmail.com. You're interrupting my plug. classyringattire@gmail.com.
What's next? We are also on iTunes. Easy way to follow the podcast. You can subscribe, give us a rating of
5 stars,
or write a review. That kind of stuff helps out the podcast. As far as iTunes mention goes, you also get episodes downloaded directly every single week.
Yes, and if you are listening to us on InsidePulse.com, leave us a comment on there. We'd love to hear from you.
We are also on Facebook. Easy way to follow Chris. Easy way to follow myself. Kind of see what other things we're working on. Until next time, stay classy and huzzah.
Huzzah!